Conversation.
We've arrived at the Detroit Metro Airport. Wait, where were we in the storyline again?
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Mitchell Wolfe.
Holy God, Mitchell. It's been...
Yep.
It's been a spell since you've been on this podcast, since you've graced us with your presence. It's been about a year, has it not?
I suppose that it has been, and I'm terribly sorry about neglecting you for that long. It's one of the greatest shames of my life. I love being on the Kongversation, and I'm so happy to be back right now.
Well, you've been a busy little bee there, Mitchell. You've been hard at work, helping bring best-selling video games to life, to the masses. And I can't fault you for that.
I've tried.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's been because that happened in April. That's been the top half of my year's greatest concern. The bottom half of this year's greatest concern is this phone call that we're having right now, actually.
Right.
I think that I can do about as much impact as what I did on that video game as what I can do here.
Well, I can't wait to see the Metacritic scores for this episode. I'm sure you'll be waiting with bated breath. No, I wanted to have you on the podcast before the year's out, before the season's out, and you had an idea for this episode that I didn't fully understand, but in my zeal to book you, I agreed to it, and I'm starting to regret that because usually, Mitchell, I come into these episodes, you've sat in and done plenty of these with me over the last several years. I have meticulous notes. I have show notes, sometimes upwards of 30 pages worth of show notes, where I attempt to, in my best form, chronicle the history of the topic at hand. But this was pitched to me in such a nebulous, vague state that I couldn't prepare for it. And so I am going into this episode completely just absent of any prep work. And it is sobering. It is frightening. I feel exposed. I feel naked. And I don't know. It's kind of intoxicating. I have to admit, it's giving me a little bit of a thrill to just kind of bare my ass in front of our audience. So thank you for the titillation, Mitchell.
Well, absolutely. I'm always happy to tit you, but I think that I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't give you a little bit of something to bite on while we think about what we're going to do here today.
Okay.
You are now self-employed.
Correct.
You work at DK Vine, I believe, is the name of the company.
Yes.
And you are your own boss.
Yeah. It's pretty great.
Thank you for confirming. It would have been really embarrassing if none of that was true. You have been doing this for a long time, though. You've been doing DK Vine management on and off since 1999, which is about 72 years. And I just wanted to tell you that, first off, we all appreciate what you're doing. And I say we, and what I mean is just everyone in the community at large. We appreciate what you're doing. The fans of the Nintendo stuff, the fans of the Rare stuff, the Platonic stuff, the any or all in between, the none of it. We see what Hyle Russell gets done, and we think that guy's amazing. He deserves a raise. You'll never give yourself one, but you deserve it. Now, what you don't have is maybe a little time to do some self-reflection. This is a part of anybody's healthcare system, the ability to regulate your own biochemistry, if you will. But we're talking now about professional chemistry, the bits of yourself that you get to think about when you sit down and really analyze your past, present, and future path through your professional per view. And Hyle, I'm just really excited that I get to be the person here with you today talking about how it's going, how it's all happening. Now, what I will say is that if you worked at a major company and a company large enough to staff its own HR department, for example, you would have a performance review maybe once a year or some other rate. And the performance review from the employee's perspective would be one meeting where you just have an interview, talk about what you do.
Yeah.
But what is actually happening behind the scenes when those happen is that there's two meetings. It's the first one with you, the employee, and then the second one that happens afterward between that person interviewing you and upper management, where they can deliver the data that they obtain. Because it's important to know how you're doing. So today, because you are a self-employed individual, we're going to have both halves of that conversation here on the podcast, one after the other. And I can only hope that we get something out of it. We become better inclined to do the work that we do. We become more excited, maybe, about the work that we do. Anything that I can help you help yourself with is something I'm happy to help myself with.
Well, Mitchell, first of all, I have to say thank you for bringing such high concept episodes to this long running podcast. And number two, things like performance reviews are exactly the reason why I decided to pursue a path of self-employment, because I hate this kind of shit. This is the kind of stuff that just fills me with misery and dread, which is fine. I mean, a little bit of misery and dread here or there, we all have to deal with it one time or another in our lives. And so it's perhaps a little bit of spice I need to keep me on my toes, to keep me honest as a self-employed Donkey Kong journalist. I do have to question the wisdom of giving me a performance review when I'm about a month into my self-employment. A month that has coincided.
Well, I wanted to talk about that first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this last month has seen me sort of recover a little bit from the stress and the strain I put on myself juggling so much and trying to keep DK Vine running for so long that, I developed chronic fatigue. And so a large part of the last month has been kind of resting and getting the youthful spring back in my step that was slowly drained out of me. But it also coincided with Thanksgiving, and I had 3 different Thanksgiving dinners I had to attend in a week's time. So I don't feel like I've been at my A game this past month. Like this has kind of been mid Hyle, as the kids would say these days. I have been just not at my usual top tier of entertainment and professional Donkey Kong journalism. So in my defense, I feel like this is far too soon.
Okay. Well, that actually feeds into my first question, which is, do you feel that you sometimes use self-deprecative underestimation of yourself to deflect from lower scores in reviews? Because I think you're nailing it.
Lower scores in reviews. So you just swipe this from work? Or did you find this online?
I've written this all myself, Hyle. I tailored it specifically to you.
Okay.
Do you think of yourself as a tired person, by the way? You were bringing that up about your stress levels, and I think that's very understandable. You've been doing this for a long time, and it takes a lot of time out of your day. Do you think of yourself as a tired person?
Tired? Yes. Well, not so much as I did maybe a month and a half ago. But yes, generally I have been exhausted. I mentioned my chronic fatigue that I brought upon myself trying to bring Donkey Kong journalism to the world. So yeah, I get a little sleepy from time to time. I have to take a little cat nap every now and again. And it does take it out of you, especially if you've been doing this since 1999. And you know, we haven't had a new Donkey Kong game, a standalone Donkey Kong game in nearly a decade. So I have to really stretch sometimes to deliver content to people. So it is exhausting. Sometimes I just do a social media post and I break out in sweats.
I can imagine the pressure.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically me.
Yeah.
I feel like I have, and this is, you know, me completely taking on way too much self-importance in what I do. But I feel like it's up to me to get people enthusiastic about these properties that, you know, maybe the people who actually own them and are responsible for their well-being let slide from time to time. So I'm like, oh wow, I haven't done a post lately about Conker's Pocket Tales. Wow. Well, somebody's got to do it, and I guess it's got to be me. And I don't know. I don't feel like I should internalize all of that, because it's really none of my business whether people are talking about Conker's Pocket Tales, is it?
Well, is it?
I mean, it is I've made it my business, whether they want it or not, whether the fine folks at Xbox Studios want it or not. I've made it my business. I've taken on the responsibility. They're not giving me money, but I'm like, you know, somebody has to stand up for this nonsense. And it's not going to be anybody else, because nobody else is doing it. So, sure.
A key deliverable I would like us to try gleaning from today's efforts is a job description. What do we want you to do in order to feel A, satisfied about yourself, B, feeling that you're benefiting the public with what you do, if you choose to make that a priority, and C, to keep up any kind of internal metric for quality that we might have for ourselves. If we have something like that, we might be able to alleviate some of that stress, because we might be internalizing some of the vagueness, if you will, of the job that you have. And it is a little vague. It's a little vague.
Yeah.
And exporting it onto a clear set of standardized rules, which I know is a big deal with you. You love your rules.
I like a
you
firm's
love your rule-based systems.
Yeah, I do enjoy a chain of logic that is upheld over time, that we can base our entire fandoms of fan enthusiasm, notions of shared lineage between games. I enjoy a good rule. Yes, I will say that about myself. By the way, Mitchell, this is really weird, because normally you would be doing this behind closed doors. You know, I've sat in on this in my day. You know, I've been on the receiving end of this, and usually you're in an office, and it's just you and the other person. Maybe there's a third person in the room with you, but generally it is a private affair.
Sure.
I'm live streaming this for our $5 and up patrons right now. So I've got Ray Day Pinball, I've got Just Andre, I've got Freezer, and I've got L in there in the room with me and you, as you're trying to peel back the layers of my brain. And I feel a little bit on the spot, and I'm starting to sweat a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me.
Do you always feel like that there's a lot of pressure on you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me be honest. Let me bare my soul a little bit. I will wake up in the morning and I will feel completely on edge until I get out some sort of social media post to let people know, hey, Hyle Russell from DK Vine is alive and he's ready to conquer the day with insight on 25-year-old video games.
It's rituals make us, Hyle. Rituals make us.
Yeah. So I'll do that, and then generally that will alleviate the pressure. It will make me feel like, okay, I have been seen, I have been heard. People are temporarily satiated, but it's more like a little sugar high, a social media post, right? Generally, to get a bigger hit, I have to write a news article, get out a podcast, maybe even a video or stream. And then I will feel at the end of the day like I put in a good day's work. And if I fail to hit any of those metrics, if I have middling social media posts, they don't have much engagement, if I, maybe had to delay the podcast because of co-host availability or illness, if my streaming isn't working right, if Twitch is acting up or I'm having technical difficulties on my end, I feel like a failure and my whole day is derailed and I go into a dark fugue state.
It sounds to me that you're putting a lot of your expectations for success on things that you can't control.
Right.
Like Twitch being down or
yes,
technical problems that are beyond your scope of fixing.
Oh, but if it's on my end, that is within my control. If it's something that's on my end, then I blame myself. And that is the hardest thing about being the world's first and only Donkey Kong journalist is while I have an amazing staff at DK Vine, Cameron just joined the room. Hello, Cameron. This is getting more awkward by the minute. It's a volunteer staff, right? Unless I'm commissioning them for art, as I do Cameron and Dustin from time to time. Everybody's doing it just of their own volition. They'll get very meager t-shirt royalties. By the way, I would love to plug our t-shirt shop at TeePublic if you would let me right now, Mitchell. I know that's unorthodox in this type of setting, but I generally...
Excuse me, it's part of your job, actually, so I would love to see you do some.
You're blowing my mind right now, Mitchell. So if you go to TeePublic and search for DK Vine or just type in dkvine.com/merchandise in that little URL bar, you can go to our merchandise shop. And what a lovely time of year it is to head to our merchandise shop. TeePublic has sales the entire month of December. And wouldn't you know it, we have new merch for the month as well. Now, I do need to be upfront with everyone. We have had a regrettable hiccup in our merchandise offerings for the very first time ever. You see, last month we rolled out the Goodnight Big Ape City shirt, a delightful merging, if you will, of the world of Donkey Kong and the world of beloved 1990s NBC sitcom Frasier. It was the Frasier logo redone in the style of Donkey Kong. It had the word donkey. It had the Big Ape City skyline from Donkey Konga 2 and some girders in the background as well. Had the blimp from Donkey Kong Land. It was a very popular design and it took off immediately. It became one of our best-selling shirts and our first ever mug and travel mug. And I was feeling really good about it. Everybody seemed to really be enjoying it. And then it turned out that because they're doing a Frasier revival right now on Paramount Plus. Frasier aired on NBC back in the day, but it's actually owned now by CBS and Paramount. So they sent out their little bots to see if anybody was selling any unauthorized Frasier merchandise. And while our design fell under fair use, because it was just parody, apparently the fidelity, how close it hewed to the Frasier logo, caused CBS's lawyers to send a cease and desist TeePublic's way, and we got a DMCA takedown of our Goodnight Big Ape City shirt. So thankfully, a lot of people got it before it happened, but if you go to our merchandise shop right now, it is not available. I hope to be able to offer it once again in the future, but I want to steer clear of Paramount's lawyers. But in the meantime, Mitchell, oh my God, for the holidays, we have the brand new t-shirt, long sleeve t-shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie, coffee mug, and travel mug. You can get it in all of these variations. The I Wish I Was the Walrus design, based on the classic Matt Cornott holiday song for DK Vine. And if you're a fan of Walrus Cove from Diddy Kong Racing, you will want to get this shirt, or maybe sweatshirt or hoodie or mug, if you will. However you want it, you can have it, and it can be a part of your holiday traditions. And that's at dkvine.com/merchandise, or just by finding us on TeePublic. And I want to thank you, Mitchell, for letting me do that in the middle of my performance review.
Well, thank you so much for showing me how you work. That was edifying.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Hyle, I, A, think that you just did a great job.
Oh, well,
but
thanks.
B, can tell that you were a little nervous about how this performance review is going to go from here on out. So if you would join me just really quickly.
Yeah.
We're going to do a bit of an exercise in...
Okay. Oh, wait. I have to breathe?
Hold it.
Okay, hold on.
Hold it. Out. Kegels are amazing. Are you ready?
Can I be frank with you? Rather than Hyle for a second.
Please.
I generally don't breathe all that much on the conversation. I'm usually gasping for air by the end of it because it's just a full-on sprint for upwards of 4 hours. And just taking the time for myself to breathe. I didn't realize my brain could actually take in oxygen while I'm doing a conversation. That's game-changing.
Yeah. I think that there might be a number of aspects about doing any kind of job that you make yourself that feel more rigid than they necessarily are. You can breathe during a podcast because you can do anything you want during a podcast. You can make the rules yourself.
All right. That's...
How do you feel about that information?
I mean, believe it or not, I try to keep the conversation to a somewhat professional standard. I don't...
Breathing won't diminish the profession. That's actually so important to me that you know that. Breathing will not lose listeners. It will not make anyone upset. It will not tank your viewership. You will be good if you breathe. It'll be fine.
The thing is, I will have to edit that breathing out, and that will just
Don't you dare do that.
That will just add another little, like, bump along the way in my workday. And that's another thing people don't realize. Like, a lot of these professional podcasts that people listen to, they are edited not by the host. They're edited by a completely separate team. All the host is doing, they might do, the prep work, write interview questions, but they just show up, they record, they send it off to get edited. That's it. Everything I'm doing right now is in-house. So I edit the conversation myself. I edit videos myself. Like, I can't afford to outsource any of my post-production. So I have to keep that in mind when I'm doing a conversation. So if I have a little pause in the discussion to do deep breaths to sort of recenter myself, well, then one, that will just take people out of the podcast. And I already know, like, plugging our Patreon at dkvine.com/Patreon, or our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/DKVine, that takes people out. Every time we do it, the people are like, I skip forward. I skip past that part. And I don't want people to start skipping past my breathing.
I don't think that they will.
Okay.
I don't think that they will. I think it's time. You told me earlier that you had some calls that you'd like to take during this performance review. We still haven't started the official performance review.
Okay. All right. So,
but I think it's a great time to jump into some calls and see what some other people, your demographic, would like to say about your performance. And
again, in every performance review I've ever sat in on, I've never had outside opinions directly solicited. For, like, maybe this happens. Maybe you get, like, customer satisfaction read back to you, And maybe that's what this could be, just a more direct method where you actually have to hear the customer berate you for what you're doing wrong. So I don't know. I just assumed this episode would be a roast where I would just be sitting on stage and a bunch of people would just be tearing into me with the most vulgar and blue insults you could ever imagine. So I put up a wall coming into this, Mitchell. So you've already kind of taken apart that wall, and now I have to take these calls where that might actually be the case, where I get roasted, and then my feelings will be hurt, and that will be on you, my friend.
Yeah, I thought we were speaking with our mutual friend Chris in a Discord chat, and he said, well, I'm sure it's going to be mostly really abstract, nonsensical questions like this, that, and the other. And I realized it would be way, way funnier if I really did a performance review and if I really actually found out how well you're doing. So that's the decision I've chosen.
Okay.
Let's see what the listeners at home have chosen.
All right, let's hear what our first listener expects out of me and what they think of my job performance thus far.
Hey, DK Vine, John Tessier here, calling in for another episode of The Kongversation. Hyle, it's great to hear that you're doing DK Vine full-time. I am so excited for what you're going to bring to the table now that you're going full-time at this. And, I just wanted to add some of my expertise because a little bit about me, I've actually worked in radio for several years as a radio producer. And so, podcast is a little bit different of a medium, but I'd like to give my expertise, give you some ideas for conversations going forward that'll help you in your performance review with Mitchell. Give you some ideas. So the first idea I had for a conversation in the future would be mind-altering substances in the DKU. I think that would be a really interesting topic. Obviously, Conquer takes a lot of mind-altering substances. But there's also, what is a mind-altering substance? Are Mumbo tokens mind-altering substances? Because you take them to Mumbo and he uses them as magic to change you into a completely different creature. So is that technically mind-altering? I don't know. I think it could be an interesting discussion. Another discussion we could do, obviously anyone could do, is Mario 64 versus Banjo-Kazooie. You could have someone on the podcast and you could heavily debate them on which game is better. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And also, what about a character witness for Lanky Kong? How have we not done that yet? We have to talk about the most interesting character in the DKU, which is Lanky Kong. Okay, that's enough of my ideas because I know you've probably got a billion of them that are probably way better. But I just wanted to give a little bit of my expertise, and I'm so happy you're doing this full time. I can't wait to see what else comes from DK Vine in the future. All right, have a good episode, guys. Can't wait to listen. Bye.
Well, thank you, John. And I have to say that one wasn't so bad. I was bracing myself. I thought he was going to give me the business there, but it was actually really pleasant, and he gave me a lot of well wishes, which I wasn't expecting. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, John Tessier has always been a lovely caller, so I don't know why I expected the worst. I think you've just put me on edge, Mitchell. I think this whole thing is just the nightmare scenario for me, somebody who is so fragile and delicate.
When people say, hey, can I talk to you about something?
Yeah.
And they just ask that question without saying what the thing is. What percentage of the time do you interpret that as a very negative thing they need to talk about?
100% of the time.
I think I'm there with you. I think that's the smart way to do it, frankly. I don't even think that's unhealthy. That's just good thinking. Generally,
whenever there's a pregnant pause in a sentence, I'm bracing for the worst. I'm bracing for the shoe to drop. But I've discussed this before, how I just automatically assume any unknown is going to be negative. And I think that stems from the unintentional trauma afflicted upon me by my parents. Because when I was a kid and the phone would ring after a certain time of night, my mom would scream, "Someone's dead." And I internalized that.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't know what she was doing. I mean, that's probably why I will never have kids, because I don't want to pay it forward. I don't want to put my traumas onto them, but, yeah, it's interesting how screwed up I am and how I'm probably not the steadiest hand at the wheel of DK Vine, but here we are. Freezer asked me, do you think your fans hate you? Generally, I think everyone barely tolerates me, Freezer. I think that people put up with me. But I don't think I would. I wouldn't even say I would have fans, right? We're all just fans of the same thing. And DK Vine, by just sheer persistence, is the biggest outlet for those things because we didn't close down in the early aughts like everyone else did. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a complicated question. You're just opening cans upon cans of worms in my brain right now, but.
Well, yeah, I do want to talk about that call, because there's two things that I think are important to take out of that. One, they were very excited.
Yeah.
For you, just existing in your own space, being self-employed.
Yeah.
Having the job that you have, working the life that you have. That's what they're excited about. They're not excited about receiving something specific from you because they didn't say, hey, when are you going to finish Donkey Konga 2? They could have, but they chose not to say that. They chose to say they're excited that you're doing this. So I think that's something to keep in the back of your mind as permanently as you can.
It will last up until we take the next call. I'm very bad. I've always been very bad about receiving compliments or taking compliments, receiving praise, because I don't internalize that. In actuality, I look at people and I'm like, what's your angle? What are you really meaning by when you say this? And that's not healthy. That's no way to live.
The other thing about that call that I think is worth noting is that they said, because I am going to make fun of you a little bit, caller. They said because they are a radio producer, they have the expertise to recommend a few pointers, and the pointers were, you should do an episode about drugs.
Right.
That's what you get as your experience as a radio producer. I thought it was going to be like, oh shit, that's actually very similar to what Hyle does. That could have some specifics, but they also mostly just want to know if Mario 64 is better than Banjo-Kazooie.
I thought John was going to tell me how to get a warmer sound for my audio leveling, and I was all ears. But no, those are great episode topics, and I just want to say I probably avoided the Super Mario 64 v Banjo-Kazooie episode unto itself for so long because it's a very contentious topic, and it's one that
it is.
In my more zealous younger years would have really taken seriously. Now I don't care as much. I do prefer Banjo-Kazooie, but I respect Super Mario 64 for how groundbreaking it was. And, it's just will this just rile people up? I don't want to rile people, Mitchell. I want to bring them happiness and contentment and a welcome distraction from the horrors that just persist in our world. So, if we could do it delicately and tastefully in a way that pleases both sides of the debate, then sure, I'd be all about that. And as far as character witness Lanky Kong goes, I don't think anybody should be concerned if I haven't done a character witness yet. I think the secret to the Kongversation's endurance, we're going to be entering our 12th season next year, is our ability to just pace ourselves and spread out topics. I think it's impressive considering that we had our first season the year Tropical Freeze was announced, and here we are in our 11th season, and we haven't had a brand new standalone Donkey Kong game since then. And yet we are continually cranking out episodes. So we will get to character witness Lanky Kong, I am sure. Just patience.
I do want to say they are very good ideas for Kongversation episodes. I just also want to say you don't have those ideas because of your expertise as a radio producer. Those are just ideas that you can have.
I don't know.
But I think they're good.
I don't know.
I would listen to them.
To be fair, the first one I hadn't thought of, and I'm not a radio producer, so I'm going to give John the benefit of the doubt here.
Okay.
All right.
Would we like to head into the second call?
Yes, I'm feeling a little bit more confident now. I've got a little bit more bounce heading into this one. So if this one is mean,
fantastic.
If this one is mean, then I just don't know how I'm going to be able to carry on because my defenses are fully down at this point.
This is Traveler of the Stars here, calling for a spicy, Mr. Wolfe's favorite phrase, spicy conversation. Hyle, Mitchell, you both are looking just and sexy. I mean, frankly, you guys are looking great. Your best selves. Keep it up. But I'm here to call in about a performance review for Hyle. Now, as someone who apparently, according to Spotify, I'm a top 2% fan. I've listened to the conversation for 9,293 minutes. So I think I am a good litmus test, good judge of our friend Hyle. You've been doing pretty good with the Luigi with the big sausage content. Maybe you could sprinkle in some more Professor Chops or Bear, right? Bear, but no, I think you're a great guy, Hyle. You're a good, positive light. Except when you say things I disagree with, then, I don't like you. Just kidding. But no, I'm just, excited for, we're kind of getting into the end of the Switch's life cycle. I think we all kind of know that. And so, for the next Nintendo console, Donkey Kong, I know you can only say so many times how, the good future of Donkey Kong is going to be, this, that, and the other, I'm in the mindset that the new Donkey Kong game is going to come out for the next system. So I am just excited for that new Horizon and just, all the stuff that we'll get to when that happens. Imagine when a new Donkey Kong game comes out, all the stuff you can talk about, right? That'll be pretty cool. I don't know. I guess in terms of games, or just what I want you to do. I mean, I'm a Wii and DS baby, so as you say, so I'm kind of like, where's my Barrel Blast content? Where's my Jungle Climber content? I have a lot of really fond memories with Jungle Climber, actually, like a lot of really fond memories with that game. So, where's Super Sluggers content? Right? I don't know. I guess that era of things, but I know you just got to Double Dash's anniversary, so that might be a while before we talk about Barrel Blast, but I don't know. Keep up the great work. Hyle, keep up the spark. I'm glad you're a full-time Donkey Kong journalist now because I intend to keep on listening. So, yeah, keep up the great work. I'll talk to you later. Probably. See you.
All right.
Wow.
So I said, what if this call is mean? And then it was Traveler of the Stars, who always showers both me and my co-host with just the loveliest praise at the front of every call. So I was like, I have nothing to worry about here either. Well, why do I do this to myself?
Yeah. Why do you do that to yourself?
I could just see you taking notes on a little pad right now. Yeah. Just writing a little, like, I've been through the therapy rodeo enough times to just know when I've like sparked a light bulb above somebody's head.
Well, speaking of spark, Traveler of the Stars very eloquently said at the end of their call that they hope that you keep up the spark. How do you feel about that?
I feel like I can do it. Especially now that my mood is considerably improved than when I was working multiple jobs and side gigs in order to make money and doing DK Vine then in sort of the margins of my time, but still considering that my full-time job. And so basically just having no free time and just there was a darkness to me, Mitchell. I this isn't a bit like I was exuding negativity in my day-to-day existence. I would just go out to the store, to pick up a few things, and people would avoid me because I just seemed like I had an edge to me, I guess, and it was just repelling people. Mm-hmm. And now, I'm actually smiling from time to time. So I think the last month or so has been really good for my mental health, where I can just do DK Vine. And granted, it's not been without its own hassles, especially since we've been having repeated issues with our hosting company. We've been having like server outages and just pages not loading right, and then I have to go talk to tech support and be like, hey, what's happening? Nothing's on our end. And then that puts me in a bad mood. But, generally, when this is all that I have on my plate and I'm not physically exhausting myself on top of everything else, the spark is far brighter than it was.
I think it's important that you recognize that people recognize that you have a spark, because you gave one of the many correct answers to that question that I just asked you. But one possible wrong answer that you could have given was, what even is the spark? I don't know what the spark is. That would be wrong to say, because you do know what the spark is. And I think that's an important centering point of what we're talking about here today. It's that we both, you, the person doing it, and I, a fan, recognize that you've got something going on that is not for free, is not worthless.
If you say so. That's a little bit too self-aggrandizing for my taste, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
We have the evidence in the call. You can go back and listen to it.
Traveler of the Stars is very nice.
Traveler of the Stars said that Traveler of the Stars is very astute, because they said my favorite word was spicy, and I don't know how they could have known that. Do I say it that much on this show?
Oh, yeah. Everybody knows that about you, Mitchell.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, I've made fun of it.
Maybe I need to say it less or more. Maybe I lean into it. I don't know.
I shouldn't say I've made fun of it. I've celebrated it while you've been on the podcast with me. And we like.
Have I said it today?
You might have.
I don't think so.
Generally, I just like, my brain puts it into your mouth if I don't hear it. So it's kind of hard for me to say one way or another whether or not you've said it. Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the YouTube comments if Mitchell has said spicy yet, aside from when he just said it now. But I think it's a fair bet that you have. It's basically your catchphrase.
Now, one other last bit of data I wanted to pull out of that call was some very interesting numbers that Traveler of the Star donated here. They are in the top 2%, so very cool, of listeners to the podcast on Spotify.
Right.
With over 9,200 minutes. That's a lot for not like top 0.1%,
Yeah.
That means a lot of people are listening to a lot of the Kongversation.
I don't do math, Mitchell, so I couldn't crunch those numbers by myself, so I appreciate you breaking it down for me like that. That's not sarcasm. If that sounded like sarcasm, it's genuinely not. I really have always struggled with numbers and like data. I couldn't, I couldn't be a Nate Silver, looking at statistics and what have you all the live long day, because that's just not the way my brain works. My brain operates in obtuse continuity rules for video games that most people have forgotten about. But no, it's very sweet. And, to your point, Traveler, about like the Nintendo DS and Wii era games. Yeah, we're going to get to that. And look, I love Peon's games. I think those are just pillars, torchbearers, if you will, that kept the light of this fandom alive during a very tumultuous time in said fandom. And we will celebrate them in due time. Don't you worry.
I think it's totally okay, and you don't have to apologize for not being a math person. I, for example, am very bad at understanding Nate Silver references. So we all have our downsides, our weaknesses.
Sorry. Yeah, no, the political polling data. All right, we'll just table that. I won't get into that because it hasn't been entirely accurate the last several cycles. So,
well, good to know. Would you like to head into the third and final call?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Could be mean. Could be a mean one. I don't think it is because this is a call we actually got 15 minutes before we went live. So I kind of know who it is. So I don't think they would be mean, but we'll play it, and I'll let you, Mitchell, be the judge.
Okay.
Hi, this is Elle. I am calling in because I saw that you're doing a performance review, and I think, Hyle Russell, that there's one glaring omission from what I believe to be the important games covered by outlets such as the Kongversation or on the Donkey Kong DK Vine Twitter. So what my thought is that how have there been as many episodes of the Kongversation as there have been, and you haven't done a single dedicated episode to any entry in the Viva Pinata series, of which there are, I don't know, like 4, 5? I think 4 or 5 is the right number, but, all Donkey Kong Universe games that have never had a spotlight or a character witness or any really devoted look into them. And I just think, I think with a critical eye, this is one of the shortcomings of your performance as Donkey Kong's ringleader for the online space. However, I would not say that overall you've been doing a poor job, because I would say that overall you've been doing a fantastic job, and I have no clue how you wrangle and manage all the things you do. So thanks for everything you do. Don't take the criticism too personally. Horstachio can deal with it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the call, Elle, who's also here in the room, the metaphorical room with us right now. I'm not going to take that criticism to heart, because it's been leveled at me far more harshly than you just did by Jeff Onan. Has lambasted me in the past for I should say mine. When I say I'm deflecting. I'm passing the buck to others on our volunteer staff who have not given Viva Pinata the short shift, whereas I very much have. And the only thing I can say in my defense is that Viva Pinata came out the several years that it was 4 games. I can tell you that much. Viva Pinata Trouble in Paradise, Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise, and then Viva Pinata Party Animals, the party game not made by Rare. And then there was, of course, the Windows version of Viva Pinata. If you want to break it down, that gets you to 5 games. Plus, there's the canon animated series as well. But the reason it's kind of not ever gotten as much love from me, DK Vine, it's not due to a lack of love. It's not due to me hating Viva Pinata. It came out at a very specific time in my life, like the heyday. The full run of the Viva Pinata series is when I was at my most detached from the Donkey Kong universe, from Rare, from DK Vine. That was when I was really focusing on screenwriting career, and it's like, DK Vine was a fun little diversion, a little hobby, a little kid's treehouse, if you will, when I was younger. But it's time to put away childish things, and it's time to write in Hollywood. And then it turned out I hated that. I hated that rat race. I hated, I very much realized at some point I just had to be my own boss, because I just could not work within any system, because I'm just too fundamentally broken. So I came back to DK Vine full time I never had like left the site, and I always did stuff for the site from time to time, but I came back full time, fully reinvested my passion for all things DKU in 2010 when Donkey Kong Country Returns was announced. And so Viva Pinata has always just kind of fallen into this very short span of time where I had my eye off the ball. And part of the problem since coming back to DK Vine in 2010 is I've always been working multiple jobs while doing DK Vine. So the grand irony, right, of spending all this time on a video game website, doing a video game podcast, various other things, going out to E3 5 years in a row, is that I never had time to play video games. And people make fun of me, or I guess maybe I'm viewing it in the harsh lens I view everything in, and maybe they're just gently needling me. But, they have fun, either at my expense or not. The fact that I don't play any games that aren't DKU. And part of the reason is I just never had the time. Juggling multiple jobs, making content for DK Vine, and also trying to find the time to, spend a little bit of time with my family. It's not been easy. And so I had to say, well, I'm just not going to play video games then. And that also kind of extends backwards to catching up on things that I haven't really fully experienced, like the Viva Pinata series. I've played Viva Pinata games, but I haven't really played Viva Pinata games, and I don't feel that qualified to talk about them. The great thing about doing DK Vine full time is I suddenly do have a window now where I could maybe actually play a video game or two beyond just what I'm playing for a stream. So really looking forward to that, Mitchell. Really giving a crack at Viva Pinata, a proper go at it. And I just got a Series X this week. I just got an Xbox Series X, so I can, play it at lightning fast speeds. And it's definitely on my docket. It's on my bucket list of what I have to do now that I have the
Did you
time
call
afforded
the
me.
Series X the Squeak?
The Squeak? No.
Is that what you said? I got the Series X the Squeak.
I don't know where you got Squeak from. I might have slurred my words a little bit, but...
Oh, did you say this week?
This week, yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay. Got a new console. The Series X. The Squeak, as we call it.
Yeah. Wow. I think if we weren't calling it that before, we kind of have to call it that now. It's definitely a lot more elegant than calling it the Series X.
I prefer the Squeak, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I think it's worth putting a pin in the Viva Pinata point.
Okay.
It is a very specific, well-founded, in my opinion, criticism, but we'd be benefited by going into the full performance review at this point.
We haven't even gotten into the full performance review yet. By the way, in the live...
other people have given their performance reviews. Yeah. I'm going to start mine.
Okay. In the live stream, just Andre says, next episode increasingly needs to be Mitchell Wolfe performance review.
Believe me, I get them. Believe me, it's happening. There's a few people that seem to care about it.
Honestly, Mitchell, it has been a year since you've been on the Kongversation, so you're overdue for your Kongversation performance review.
Well, one at a time, kids. First question, Hyle, in my interview.
Yeah.
How do you think it's going?
Oh God, this is why, again, I'm gonna beat this point into the ground at this point like a piñata. But this is why I had to be self-employed. This is why I had to make up my own bullshit career, because I just can't sit there in the corporate world and take this nonsense. You're doing a great job, Mitchell. Thank you for keeping me honest. Thank you for really forcing me to examine myself, analyze myself. It's something we all need to do, and we don't do enough. But how do I think it's going? All right. Well,
how do you think it's? Yeah, a lot of stalling there, but how do you think it's going?
I deflect with humor. That's something I learned, I think, in high school. It's just, I can be the funny guy, and it makes all my problems go away. And, it gets you in hot water from time to time, but I'm doing it some more. No, I think it's going okay. I would give my performance this past month a solid C-. I obviously have far grander ambitions than the past month. A lot of it has been, as I said, just being on the mend, just recuperating from the last 13 years. It's just the barrage I put myself through. And I also, don't really have the technical setup yet that I want to have to really churn out content efficiently, effectively, and with the high production sheen that I demand from myself. But I'm getting there. Already, it's been great just being there at my keyboard when a news story breaks or begins to break, and I can just immediately write a story about it. That's been a really refreshing change of pace, rather than something breaking and me being out of the house and then having to furiously text various DK Vine staffers saying, "Hey, can you write this article?" And then they're like, "Well, we're at work." And I'm like, "Well, shit." So just having DKVine.com actually be a curated source of news for all of this, that's been really refreshing and has made me feel, I think, the proudest the past month. Something I can hang my hat on and be like, yeah, that is something that's fundamentally different than it was before I started this. So happy about that.
Not enough for a C-?
Well, the C- is from the Kongversation being slightly off schedule the past month, streams being irregular and infrequent, and I'm still laboring in post-production for my first short form video, where I haven't done video editing in quite a while, and so my muscles have atrophied. Right? I haven't really done it in a long time, so it's taking me a bit of time just to edit this stupid little 13-minute video. And I wish I could be quicker on that, but I'm also juggling everything else. So maybe I should go easier on myself. I don't know. But yes, C-.
You know what I've heard in the last 2 minutes of you talking is that you've been picking up old skills that have maybe atrophied, and you're putting more work into them. You are being more aggressive about writing up news articles about the things that interest both you and the community. And you've let your very rigorous and strict screaming and conversation schedule slide a little bit in favor of some of those new things. I have heard nothing but good. And I would be remiss if you didn't get a B+ or at least an A- in your own head for the stuff that has happened just within the last month.
I don't want you to grade me on a curve, Mitchell. I want to be kept honest. I want my feet held to the fire.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not Cerebi, but
I don't know what that is.
Know what I mean?
I don't know what that is.
Do you really not?
Is that a Pokemon?
I was just joking. I was comparing you to the Pokemon fan site Cerebi.
Oh, okay, good, yeah.
It was you know what? It was an ill-advised joke. I could have done my research, but I didn't. That's on me. That's why you're in the seat you're in, and I'm just here grading you. People don't want to see my work.
Freezer's coming after me. She says it's a huge Pokemon site. I don't know. I'm in a bubble. I'm in a workaholic bubble where I'm just some Donkey Kong rare ukulele, and I don't have time to look up Pokemon sites. Why would I do that? I mean, I'm happy for them. They're a huge Pokemon site. I hope to be as big as they are, but for the Donkey Kong stuff. That's my aspirations. I haven't been there. I haven't seen it. I'm sure they do quality work. I want to do quality work. Maybe if I go there, I'll feel bad about myself because I haven't reached that level.
So this level of anger is bringing your score down a little bit, but we'll move on.
I'm not angry. I'm angry at myself for not being as big as that Pokemon site you said. I forgot the name already.
So it's the Japanese name for Celebi, so it's Cerebi. So how much time would you say you spend on the various aspects of DK Vine by percentage of your time? For example, the Kongversation might be one pool of your time versus news articles versus streaming versus features of other kinds. What would your time divide look like?
So you want me to break it down bit by
I would love to hear it.
How much percentage of my time is devoted to the Kongversation? Yeah. Okay. And this is for like my life or just DK Vine, like my just my workflow for DK Vine.
I don't know. Oh, I see what you're asking. I would say of the time you spend on DK Vine or working on DK Vine.
Okay.
Yeah. What percentage of that is each thing?
I would say the Kongversation, it depends on how rough the edit is, right? So, for example, a 4-hour episode means I have to edit quite a bit because we don't just put these up raw, right? I level the audio, I do very basic noise filtering, and then I go through second by second and I make sure the audio is basically pristine. So I silence all the little weird hiccups or traffic noises or whatever. And that can take quite a long time. And so I would say 30% of my time is devoted to the Kongversation, especially if it's a rough edit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I can get that down to 20% if it's just an episode that is absolutely perfect. There were no audio problems whatsoever, but generally there's something going on in any given episode because we don't do these in a controlled environment. We don't do these in a nice recording booth, a nice studio. We're doing these, like the hosts are separated, sometimes by states, sometimes on opposite sides of the continent. Sometimes we have oceans between us. And so there are a lot of factors when you do a podcast that way where things can go wrong. And so, again, I edit them myself. So it does eat up your time, especially if you have high standards, which I do to my detriment. News articles, it just depends on the week. Again, this had been a slow week as far as the news goes. And then, just today, Platonic vaguely teased something. I wouldn't get your hopes up about it, but it's teasing some sort of collaboration with some other indie studios. Could be just cosmetics in one of their games. It could be something else, but I had to write a news article on that. Wasn't expecting to write a news article about that today. Was expecting to devote my time to video editing, but then I had to write a news article for that. So, it varies. So I would say maybe, as of the last month, maybe 25% of my time is devoted to news. And then you've got social media, which I try to put out something on social media every single day. That doesn't usually take a lot of time, but sometimes you really have to reach for what you're going to say. So, and that's more of a constant running dialogue throughout your day. So that's kind of a low level thing where I'm not just thinking like, oh, I have to do something. I'm keeping that in the back of my mind while I'm taking a shower or brushing my teeth or doing something else for DK Vine. And then I'll think of something, I'll stop, blast that out. So that's kind of harder to judge how much time that takes as far as, because that's more of an ever-present thing, right? That's more background noise than anything. Video editing
sure. So
takes
you
a long
time. So just to recap, you said about 30% for the Kongversation, 25% for news articles,
and this fluctuates from week to week. So
that would take. Sure, that would remain a remainder of 45% between, I imagine, a miscellaneous amount of other things that you're working on that you might not always be working on?
Yeah. So we got, of course, video editing, got merchandise design, making sure our new t-shirts are ready to roll out. Got streaming. We've got just a lot of little things like uploading things, uploading the podcast, writing the descriptions for them, plugging them on the forum, plugging them on social media to our patrons, sending messages to the patrons. Oh, and a large part of my time the past month has been dealing with tech support with Hostmonster, our hosting company. So it's been a lot.
Right, I've heard a little bit about that.
Yeah. And like the most recent day I had to sit down with that was, I believe, maybe Saturday. Maybe it was Saturday. I had to take time out of my Saturday to. So that's actually eaten up an unhealthy amount of time this first month because we've been having issues there. So
I see.
Yeah.
So barring these emergency procedures, we'll call them, that you have to go through when something goes wrong like this, that shouldn't be a permanent thing. Are you happy with this breakdown? Would you like to see yourself be spending more time in one area or another?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I don't want to spend as much time as I do editing the conversation. I would love it if I could just do it with a lot more efficiency and ease, but I'm not willing to sacrifice quality for that. So I just basically want to be superhuman, and I want to be able to do more and churn out more product. And I realize it's not feasible considering I'm one person, and I don't delegate, Mitchell. That's the thing. Because I do have a wonderful volunteer staff, but it was different when I was in high school or even college or even in my early 20s to mid 20s, where it would just be, oh, we're just doing this for fun. This doesn't really matter. We'll all shoulder the burden because it's good for a laugh. Because it's my business now, because it's my livelihood, I can in good conscience just say, hey, Cameron, hey, Dustin, hey, Jeff, hey, Gibbon, do XYZ for me. And you might not see any profits from that. You might not see a paycheck from that. So I have to shoulder that burden until I am well off enough, until DK Vine is well off enough that I can start cutting people a paycheck and maybe making that their job as well. And that's a long way off. Who knows will we even ever get there. So, yeah.
Do you ever think about people maybe 30, 40 years from now or so?
What do you mean?
Just talking about... Well, let me finish. People 30, 40 years from now, maybe they are fans of video games like from today's period.
Yeah.
Or older, even. They're in a congregation, they're old men now, and they're just sipping on some coffee outside of a cafe, and one of them asks the other, hey, do you remember DK Vine? Do you ever think about that?
Well, I think about it, but less in terms of, hey, do you remember DK Vine? And more, hey, what's DK Vine up to right now? Because I'm building this to last, Mitchell. We've lasted implausibly 24 years now. And I think we've got another century or two in us, if I play my cards right. Now, will I be here to shepherd that? I mean, there's methods that haven't been devised yet. No. I'm not willing to concede to death yet. Okay. There could be workarounds. There's reincarnation. There are seances that can be held that can incorporate me. All right. There are many loopholes and windows I can work my way back to make sure that content is getting churned out on a weekly basis. But worst comes to worst, and I'm completely shut out of the process because I can't find my way back from the hereafter. I do want it to be built to last, and I do want to have, an heir apparent, when I'm too feeble or too cremated to carry on. So I do want, I want there to be top-notch Donkey Kong journalism.
Okay.
With a wink, with a little twinkle in its eye. When we're just deep in the climate crisis, when people are migrating further north to get away from the floods and the fires. I'm bringing it down now, I realize, but I want them to have DK Vine there to, bring a little levity to their otherwise strenuous
when
lives.
my town burned down,
yeah,
which is something that happened 6 years ago or so, I did talk about it on the DK Vine forum. That was a part of my life at the time that I prioritized. So I don't think you're completely without substance there when you talk about that.
Well, there you go.
I think that's something real. Can we talk about the conversation specifically? Can we talk about the show?
Sure. We're talking about it right now by virtue of being on it.
I would say that is reflexively true, but I'd like to be more aggressively true and talk specifically about it. We have crossed over a decade of the conversation. We've gone on for some time now.
That's right. Although to be fair, I really feel like only the last 4 seasons or so have been worthwhile to listen to. So, in a sense, we're still in our prime.
You've said that every 4 seasons or so. I don't know how true it is. I think
it's pretty true. I think
had a remarkably consistent run.
No, I think we keep raising the bar, and I feel like at a certain point, you just don't want to look underneath that bar anymore. You just want to keep raising it further. I want to get to the point where this season of the conversation deserves to be chucked in the bin.
I hope so. If we get to a point where we are throwing away this season, what would you want the show to be? Like, what would the measure of success be that you're not hitting now that would just embarrass this season look like? What would it look like?
Well, I definitely want to have even more insightful episodes, Mitchell, because the thing I'm proud about right now, as far as the conversation, is we talk about things that have never been talked about anywhere else. I do make light of things like being a Donkey Kong journalist and how, like, on the surface level, by society standards, that's a really stupid thing. But I'm genuinely proud of the topics we broach, the things we've discussed, stories we've broken, little insights into the past, like going all the way back. Just the other week, we had an episode about the Diddy Kong Racing follow-up for the Game Boy Color that never saw the light of day. We talked about Dino Island, stuff that's never been talked about. And we were able to come in with insight of what was happening at Rare at the time. And I'm like, that's really cool, because nobody really goes after these stories. Generally, it's just an area of video game history that's overlooked for numerous reasons. But again, it's the philosophy I have is, well, if it's not going to be me, then who? So it's got to be me. So I can actually, do some digging and bring some interesting facts that have never been broached before to the light. And that's, I think, been a hallmark of this season in particular. Been really, really proud of the work we've done. I think we've got a terrific stable of co-hosts, both regular and irregular. You would be in the irregular camp at this point, Mitchell, but you're one of my favorite co-hosts, so don't take that as a criticism. You're just very, very busy, again, making best-selling, award-nominated games. So, kudos on that. But
thank you so much.
I
don't know what to say. I'm smitten. I'm flustered.
I think that I want to keep raising that bar. And I know, like, it's the ethos of corporate America that's led us to ruin, right? You cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. And
right.
The thing is, though, Donkey Kong journalism, I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Keeps going up.
Yeah,
keeps going up and up.
Well, so I think that now that I am refreshed, or am in the process of refreshing myself, where I am shaving off the years of accumulated exhaustion and fatigue, I think I can approach the conversation, especially the conversation season 12, with a renewed vigor and vitality that I think would even surprise our faithful audience who listen to every episode.
I would be excited to see it, Hyle, but as you mentioned, I think a focus on growth in and of itself might be slightly less important than the idea of maintaining a good thing. I think that you said it best when you said what you said. Can we talk about co-hosts, by the way? Because you brought up a point earlier, which is that it is very, very early in this stage of your career to have a performance review.
Yeah.
Which is why this performance review isn't really about this stage of your career necessarily. Okay. It's about the entire time you've spent on DK Vine since 1999.
Well, that's no good.
And, well, let's talk about it. You spent the... I've broken down the history of DK Vine into... What do I have? I have 6 periods here. And let me know if you disagree with my categorization. You've got early times, which it might be the shortest period. It lasts from the foundation of the website until the buyout of Rare being sold to Microsoft.
Roughly, yes.
After that, you've got the buyout period, which might be the longest period, in contrast, which goes from the 2002 buyout until the release, or at least announcement. Yeah, let's call it the announcement of Donkey Kong Country Returns. Very long period, but probably the period of time that sort of solidified what early DK Vine had become. It had some big boy pants, if you will. During that
it had. I think
then we had the Returns era.
I would say to the buyout era, you say big boy pants. I feel like it was the time where our pants were at their most immature, but I think that is what most people knew DK Vine for, up until I think several years into the next era. It took a while for us to shake that image that we had cultivated for ourselves as this angry, bitter fan site.
Well, it's what they say, the pants don't make the man, but also what they say, liar, liar, pants on fire.
They do say that.
So the third period of DK Vine is the Returns era. The Returns era being roughly from... This is up to you if you want to agree to this categorization or not. I'm taking some creative liberty here. I'm saying it goes from the announcement of Donkey Kong Country Returns into the formation of the Kongversation podcast, which is a couple years.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Home to the Vine Donkey Kong audio program.
Yeah.
So is that the correct words in that order?
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Vine audio?
That's close
program?
enough. That's close enough for what it matters these days. I think, yeah, that's pretty fair. I would categorize this era as collectively refining our enthusiasm for all of this and sort of having a excuse to have a second childhood. You know, it came at a time in our lives of just disorienting disillusionment of what I know for me, what I wanted to be, where was I going to go from here, and to sort of be able to regress a little bit was an indulgence that honestly felt great. And what I look back at this time, like with the most fondness is this is when I made relationships, when I made friendships that have persisted to this day. This is where we brought on staffers that are still with us. And I made friendships
I believe
with
that's
them.
when you got a hold of Jeff Onan and Cameron Regal, I believe, were both in this between returns and the conversation starting period.
Cameron and Jeff and Matt Corna and Joe Mudd. And they're still affiliated with DK Vine as well, of course. And we had like them come in, and they just brought this fresh energy to the website and to all of our productions. They had their own podcast, the Pod DK Cast, like in this pre-Kongversation era, and it was just a lot of fun because we only really had this one new game to discuss, and of course the entire back catalog. But it was really just us finding ways to have fun with it. And basically that kind of became the ethos of DK Vine going forward, is rather than wringing our hands about, oh, there hasn't been a new Donkey Kong game in this many years. Oh, what's happening with Rare? Why haven't they made a new It's Mr. Pants game? It's less about that and more about having fun with what we do have and celebrating that and finding contentment and joy in that. And it took a while to sort of process that mentality, even if we were living it, even if we were being examples of it. I wasn't really processing the transformative effect it was having. And part of that effect was the energy that Matt and Jeff and Cameron and Joe and everyone else brought with them, rubbing off on me and showing me a better way to go about this. So yeah, that's what I look back at that. It's a very short amount of time, and it's a very ill-defined period, but I remember it with a lot of fondness.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I'm breaking these down not in terms of the DKU periods, because we've had that conversation before.
Right.
We're breaking this down in terms of Hyle Russell and DK Vine periods. What's been happening interpersonally and professionally within the space. After that, I would say the Kongversation period is the next period. From the beginning of that show, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, started in 2013 or 12?
2013. No, it was
13.
It was around the time of Obama's second inauguration. Just because I was invited.
That's how I remember it also.
I was invited and I couldn't make it because I had a podcast to do.
Yeah. That's when you and Chad McCann started the Kongversation, and it has been going ever since. We are not counting that as one large decade-long period, though I have broken it down further than that.
Sure.
But believe me when I say, impressive run. What an impressive run for a podcast.
I'm stubborn.
Have you believed me when I said it?
No, I mean, I recognize that it's impressive. It could be more impressive. I always view like what we haven't done versus
of course you could just keep doing it and it's longer and more impressive, but it's already impressive.
It's only impressive because I'm stubborn and I refuse to quit.
Well, let's talk about the next period actually, which is the Rare Renaissance.
Okay.
I'm categorizing this as starting around and I might be a little biased here because this is kind of when I came into the picture as well.
Sure.
But I'm talking about E3 2015 as the beginning of the Rare Renaissance in terms of how this website operated. It feels like a shift from the earlier parts of the Kongversation.
You talk about big boy pants, right? Or big girl pants.
Talk about big boy pants.
Or big non-binary pants. Whatever the pants, however you wear them.
Sure.
This is when I feel
pants themselves are boys. They can go on any person.
That's right. But I feel like this is when we started wearing them.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had them. You had them before, but you've chosen to put them on.
This is the first time we went out in polite society, so I felt like I had to be decent.
Good.
Yeah.
Good instinct. I like that for you. But I did want to clarify as well. this is the earliest Kongversation that is still online. Earlier than than 2015, the first 2 years of the Kongversation have been removed from basically everywhere that offers the podcast. And you've spoken on this before.
Yeah.
As to why you've done it. How, a few years after you've done it, how do you feel reflecting on both the early days of the podcast and your choice to delist them?
You know, we basically grew up, and sometimes that process takes a little bit longer for some people. Sometimes you lack the perspective that you are granted or that you develop later in life. And it just, you know, the jokes we made at that time, they were just the height of smug, like, white insulated liberals who thought, oh, you know, we can joke about anything because we don't mean it. Ha ha ha. And yeah, it's just like, get rid of that.
Like the joke is that we couldn't possibly actually mean this. You shouldn't assume we mean it. But then you realize the world around us is
right,
actually meaning it.
Yeah,
so why would they assume different about us?
Well, and it's just, it's like, no matter how you parse that style of humor, which was in vogue, like, I'm not ever going to defend the jokes we used to make here, but it was very in vogue in the comedy scene, of which we, you know, had went out to Hollywood and you know, had partaken in a little bit ourselves, but it was very much in vogue in that era. And that was kind of the tail end of that era, right? It's when people started waking up to, hey, you know what? Even if you do these jokes ironically, they're still garbage and you're still punching down. You're just doing it. You're just basically putting up a level there that say, yeah, you don't really mean it, but you're still saying it. And, once you gain that perspective, you're like, oh shit, that's no good. And so, yeah, like, I delisted the first 2 seasons of the Kongversation, and there were some good episodes in there for sure, but I don't regret it. Honestly, like, I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Sure.
So, and that's why, you know, I'm always just continually to strive to do better. Because that's my philosophy for life, is that we are not fully formed out of the womb, and we have to continually hold ourselves to a high personal standard as well as professional standard. And we just have to continually grow and become better people. If there is a meaning to all of this, Mitchell, if there is a meaning to life, it's that. It's to always do better, to become a better person than you were the day prior, and to never stop learning and educating yourself. And it's something I hold as my, I think, bedrock to who I am and the way I try to live my life. And yeah, I slip up and I make mistakes. I put my foot in my mouth from time to time, but when I do, I try to recognize it and I try to apologize for it. And I try to make the promise. I do make the promise, but I try to hold myself to it that it will never happen again. And so yeah, that's a little insight into why you can't find the first 2 seasons of the podcast anymore.
We trust in the decision you've made. We everyone at my firm is what I mean when I say
good.
Yeah, we think that it is possible, as you mentioned, that there might have been some babies thrown out with the bathwater there. But it's babies that we're okay to miss.
Yeah,
it makes all of us feel more comfortable about the job that we have. And again, from a biased perspective, my favorite episode of the podcast that you've ever done is the first one I've listened to. So it's all been downhill from there, I suppose. You'll have to think about that. But the interview that you and Chad did with Chris Sutherland in early 2015, very shortly after, and I mean very shortly, like immediately, after the announcement of Platonic Games as a studio.
Right.
That was a very important episode, and that is still listed. So I think that you've picked a prescient time period to cut it off. If you if it is your wish to do so, it's you've done it with good accuracy.
Well, and again, DK Vine for the longest time, it just felt like a stupid little clubhouse, right? Like we weren't trying to reach a broader audience. We were just basically finding an excuse to talk about and celebrate these things that we liked. And I think the Renaissance, as we define it, which, you know, you can, I think DK Vine officially marks the beginning of the Renaissance as the announcement of Tropical Freeze or
the announcement of Tropical Freeze?
Well, the release of Tropical Freeze. It roughly 2013 to 2014, that's when the gears started turning to lead us into the Renaissance at the very least. But it was a shift for DK Vine, and it wasn't a planned shift. It just kind of happened. They announced Platonic Games was formed on the back of all of these esteemed people from Rare that we knew and loved and had followed their careers, and they were forming their own studio. And you know, I don't know what got in my system that night, but I reached out. I sent them an email explaining who we were, how we would love to have them on our podcast. And like, this is before they even had Andy Robinson take a drink working for them. They were just like,
are we still doing that?
Oh yeah. You got to take a drink, Mitchell.
Okay.
Everybody take a drink.
Okay.
I said the name. But
I'm drinking a Topo Chico Ranch Water hard seltzer right now.
Nice. I have Bold Rock.
100% agave and real lime juice. What'd you say?
I love agave, by the way. This is Bold Rock hard cider. It's a local brand. Got a couple cases from a friend.
Is it apple cider?
Yeah. Got a couple cases from a friend.
Delicious.
For my birthday the other week, and yeah. It's the lubricant of which many a successful conversation has been had. But yeah, so I reached out to Platonic and like they didn't have anybody like working for like as like the middle man or the middle person to, you know, protect them from their fans. And they got back immediately and they're like, yeah, we would love to do it. We'll send Chris Sutherland to do it. And
wow,
yeah, like we said, like they had an exclusive. I think it was it Edge magazine that had the exclusive, like breaking the story of what like their studio's formation, and so like they were like, we can't do it before then, but you are our very next outlet that we will talk to. So Chris Sutherland came on the conversation. And that was really a turning point for us because not only did it bring us and introduce us to a lot of people who either had never heard of us or had never given us the time of day before, but it also sort of started us down a road where we started treating us a lot more seriously. Just getting to talk to somebody who had actually worked on many of our favorite games. And I was a nervous wreck that episode. I don't think I've ever been more terrified going into a podcast than I was on that particular episode. And I still get butterflies in my stomach before every conversation, but I was white as a sheet doing that one. I really felt like I was talking to a celebrity because he is a celebrity in our world at the very least. So it was, it was a performance I was not at my best at. I think I'm a much more capable interviewer nowadays than I was back then, but you got to start somewhere, right? And from there,
Would you consider it a career moment?
From there, a lot of things happened in quick succession because that was but a month or two before E3, and
right.
That was the very first E3 we attended in person as well.
It was. It was, as happenstance has provided, it was where I met you as well.
That's right. Yeah. We went to a Mexican restaurant, and I believe they had agave on the table.
I believe so. I was too young to drink.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I was 20 years old, Hyle, and my next birthday is 30.
Wow.
That's how much time it's been. That's how much of our lives have elapsed since the announcement of Sea of Thieves and Rare Replay.
That's right. So that E3 was really where I started making a lot of connections. I started developing sources for the first time. And that's where I really got it into my head that, hey, maybe there's something to this. Like maybe DK Vine is actually a sustainable career path for me. Because it wasn't just like meeting a lot of people from Rare in person, meeting the people from Playtonic in person, meeting the likes of Grant Kirkhope. I also, developed anonymous sources from that E3. Not anonymous to me, but, I was approached like Watergate, with like info on what was happening with Retro Studios. And, that was just a surreal week of my life. And it was a whirlwind. It I'm a workaholic. I think maybe you can ascertain that, about me from just sitting down and having this performance review.
It has been like the point of the whole thing.
Yeah, like I don't recommend being a workaholic. I think it's a really shitty way to live your life. I think you need to take the time for self-care. It's very important. Don't be strung along by what is ingrained in our heads at a young age by living in a capitalist system. Like, make sure you live your life. But the problem is I find value and enrichment in my work at DK Vine. So it becomes this vicious cycle that I get locked into. But that week just going non-stop. And of course I got very, very ill by the end of that week. If you'll remember, Mitchell, I was too ill to play Star Fox Zero with you on the show floor. But I was just going basically 24 hours a day. That's an exaggeration, but I was getting very limited sleep, just taking caffeine pills left and right, chugging energy drinks, just going at a frantic, almost manic pace. Because the fun thing too is I suffer from bipolar 2. So I do have manic episodes where I am not just depressed. I'm actually like a little cokehead bouncing around 1980s New York City. And so I was very much that little cokehead that week. And it was very fun, very rewarding. It's no wonder I got sick.
I cannot believe, especially in a post-COVID world where we're all a little bit more cognizant of the risks. I can't believe that we didn't just die every time.
Yeah, I stopped getting sick.
We went to 5 of those. We should have died.
I think I got sick.
We really should have.
Only 2 of them. I think eventually I built up some sort of convention flu immunity, or at the very least resistance. Now, I'm sure if I went back now, I would get sick because it's been a while since E3 is dead and gone. But like I basically found a way to keep from catching ill by the end of it. So that's good.
My strategy near the end of our E3 going experiences, especially with 2019, was just if I can sleep 70% of every day, I'll be exposed to less stuff. And that seemed to work.
Yeah.
I was the sleepiest boy I've ever been that time. And I think I think back to that and I'm like proud of myself a little bit. I want to knuckle touch me and then let me go to sleep. That's the world I lived in.
Not to jump too far ahead in the chronology here, but I talked about how fulfilling E3 2015 was. I think E3 2019,
sure,
the last E3 I went to, and the one that was the 4 of us. It was you, Mitchell. It was me. It was Jeff Oden, and it was Cameron Regal. We were all roommates, and we basically had this shared experience, like a workspace. We were all doing our independent ventures, but then, like I'd be doing DK Vine in the corner. Jeff would be doing Golden Sands blog posts. And, we'd come together for the conversation every night. And that was the most fun I've ever had doing DK Vine.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I was firmly I was like 25 and you were like 35. But, like, between everyone there, it felt like our Stand By Me, like, remember that one thing we did as kids? It was just such a fun week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Linking those two E3s together, they happen to be the only two E3s in recent memory that we saw Banjo-Kazooie at. And I think that sort of means something. Maybe they should have more Banjo-Kazooie E3s if they want to have good ones.
I think that's
my opinion. Maybe they should have more E3s if they want to have a good one.
Right. I think that's the more pressing concern at the moment. But yeah, it was nice that come full circle. Started with Rare Replay, ended with Banjo and Kazooie and Smash. And of course, we started with Ukulele and then ended with Ukulele and the Impossible Lair, also part of E3 2019. Mm-hmm. So it was very cool to kind of have the two highs of E3, our E3 careers linked as they were.
I do want to move on to the next, and final and current period of DK Vine. But
okay.
Let's stay in the Renaissance for just one more moment because there was this was the moment, and it's critical, I think, for your development, both as a host of this podcast and webmaster for the website.
Webmaster?
Chad stepped aside. Webmaster?
Do people still use the term webmaster?
Am I antiquated? Is that not? Do we not do that anymore?
Yeah, Grandpa. This isn't a GeoCities site. No.
What are you then to it?
I'm editor-in-chief.
All right. This was the time. This is the time that Chad stepped out of the partnership of leading the DK Vine effort, and it fell all to you.
I thought you were going to say it fell apart. Okay, that's good to hear.
And it had never been. It sucked forever after that point, and this is what I've brought you here today to talk about. Your performance sucks.
Yeah.
No. This is when it fell all to you, and you've made the executive decision here to not replace Chad's permanent spot co-hosting the show with you,
right?
With anyone, and have instead elected to make what I think is a pretty bold decision, to constantly rotate your partner out of a pool of like a dozen or so people who've been on the show with you.
That's right. Yeah.
Very bold decision.
It makes it sound like I'm a bag of Doritos when you say anything I've done is bold, but
it's a very Sweet Ranch decision. I think that we need to focus in on that.
I know you're trying to avoid saying spicy, Mitchell. We all know you want to say it. We all expect you to say it. We all come for the thing, and you're depriving us of the thing. But yeah,
I do feel a little bit like Bart Simpson, where all the other classmates are just looking at him to say, "Don't have a cow, man." And will cheer loudly at my expense when I become sad because I've said the thing that used to bring me joy. But let's talk about you for a second.
Sure.
Because that is what we're here to do. You've chosen to have a rotating cast host the show with you. And I gotta be honest, Hyle, this was in this reviewer's mind possibly too risky of a decision, despite the fact that also in this reviewer's mind, it did work out. I think that the show has been great. I think the show has had a lot of variety within the last few years.
Yeah.
It's had a lot of
spiciness.
It's had drama. It's had its sweet spots. It's had its very analytical dives into things. everyone in the comments is roasting me on Simpsons trivia. I don't care, guys. That
I don't
show's
care either.
old as hell.
You know, I haven't watched The Simpsons since DK Vine was a thing. So, like, whenever people get up my ass about The Simpsons, oh, it's actually good again. Like, I just don't care. I'm not going to get reinvested in something I don't care about anymore.
Yeah, it's no Family Guy. But, yeah, Hyle, how do you feel that's gone? Like that specific jump from having a permanent co-host to having a rotating cast?
It was probably the riskiest decision I made at a very overwhelming time in both my personal life and my burgeoning professional career with DK Vine. And I feel like it's the best decision I've made. It as you said, added so much variety to the conversation. And I don't really talk about my methods that much on the podcast, but I do carefully consider who my co-host will be for the topic at hand. For example, doing a performance review. That's only an episode that Mitchell could do because Mitchell's the only one who would ever think of it.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
So Chad and I, of course, had a very, probably not likable for everybody, but it was a very, likable repartee. We clicked. We were kind of like sugar and spice. I'll leave it to you to decide who is who, but it was a very effective creative partnership when it was active, and I think, you know, it would have probably run its course, and I think trying to replicate it, I think trying to find another co-host who could bring that same energy with me would have been a fallacy. And what I definitely didn't want to do was do the, like, Daily Show style. We're just going to try out different people, and then maybe we'll find one that will make the permanent co-host, because that
is what I assumed you were doing.
No. Yeah. I will say season 5, when this was all shaking out, my least favorite season of the Kongversation. It was the season where I was feeling my least confident, and I was just struggling to keep all of these balls in the air without having any, like, any give. Like, I wasn't willing to concede defeat, where, like, before, like, you know, we would take turns editing the podcast. It wouldn't all be in one person's lap, and suddenly it was, and I was just taking on more work than ever, but I wasn't willing to let the conversation wither and die, and so it was a risky gambit. Like, and luckily, you know, with the staff that we had brought on, they were already experienced doing their own podcast. So it wasn't like I was training babies or anything. They all had their own particular energy that they could bring to it. And I think what I just had to learn was how to tailor each person's knowledge, expertise, and personality to any given topic. And once I hit upon that, and once I just developed that sort of sixth sense or seventh sense or whatever, I realized, like, okay, this is a winning formula. Like, I feel like maybe the show has legs, and it's not something I'm ever going to go back on. Like, there won't ever be a permanent co-host again with me. It's just, I really like this format, because plus also, just on a selfish side of things, it's also an excuse to hang out with my friends who live around the world.
Sure.
Every week. So like, Josh Wallen, the Geek Critique, and I discuss this all the time. Like, our method of hanging out is doing the podcast together. And it's a great way to catch up. It's a great way to have some laughs. And I think that's the kind of relaxed podcasting that really brings me joy. That's when it doesn't feel like work. That's when it just feels like, okay, we're having a good time. And hopefully our audience is having a good time with us.
Part of this performance review, in my opinion, should be me giving you information about things that you have been doing that you might not have thought of in these ways, that I've thought about them. So, humor me a little bit for just a moment, because I have a theory.
Uh-oh.
A hypothesis, really.
Okay.
Because a theory would need to be proven, and it's not. That the move specifically, to say nothing of the quality of the show that you had when you were with Chad, which I think was incredibly high, and to say nothing of the quality of the show after Chad left, the repartee that you two had was a big reason that I listened to the show and became a fan myself. But in that move to have a rotating cast of co-hosts, you addressed what I believe is the number one weakness of DK Vine as a platform before that moment. And I'm wondering if you can even guess what I think it was.
Probably insular references to things.
No, we love those. Nope.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. No, my thing about this was that before that moment, I believe both you and Chad had always said that DK Vine as an institution is a parody fan site where it's a parody of people that care too much about like these silly internet nerd things. So we're sort of making fun of the idea of caring this much about it, while also kind of just outright doing it. I always thought that was bullshit, and I hated it. For one, I can tell you do love it. So why, like, what are we doing? What are we talking about?
Right.
Yeah. For two, in being more sincere, you can open so many more doors, especially for comedy. Because we care about a thing, we can talk about it using a shared language with all of the listeners of the podcast, for example, that might also care about it and also talk about it. So in getting a rotating cast of co-hosts, I don't know if you've consciously done this, but in choosing a co-host based on what they're going to talk about, you've made the show so much more sincere and interested. The show is interested. I don't know if the show's interesting. That depends on you, listener, what you're interested in. But the show is interested in what it's talking about all the time, because it always has the right person to be interested in it. I think that is an immense improvement over the DK Vine of 10 to 15 or so years ago.
Yeah.
And is something to be really proud of that you've accomplished.
So I will agree with you there. Not that I've disagreed with you on anything, really, that you're saying thus far, but I definitely, as soon as the words started to come out of your mouth, I knew where this was going, and I chuckled because I completely agree. So for the record, like, the whole DK Vine is a parody of fan sites. It's not something I ever fully subscribed to myself, right? I feel like that was the bedtime story we told ourselves to make ourselves feel better because of said societal pressure to either put away childish things or to like look at these games that are starring a bunch of silly monkeys and googly-eyed monstrosities. And like, well, you know, nobody takes this stuff seriously, so we can't take it seriously because then nobody will take us seriously. And I think that's partly the culture and society DK Vine came up in when it was founded in 1999, and just the kind of like, oh, nerds talking about nerd stuff online, oh, the internet. And of course now, in that time, that massive gulf of time, that almost quarter century that we've been online.
Yeah.
And has seen like the internet become just a basic utility in everybody's pocket, and has seen the passions of fan culture become ubiquitous, become mainstream. Even if people are getting tired of comic book movies, it's still something that you don't shy away from. Oh, I'm a fan of this. I'm a fan of that. It used to be, if you're an adult, the only socially acceptable thing you could be a fan of was sports. And you could be as weird and like obsessive about it as possible. And it was okay because it was deemed respectable. But if you're into Star Trek or Star Wars, and genre stuff, comic books, video games, and the less like mainstream the video game, or maybe not even mainstream, but the more that it veers from things that prop up either like people's fragile masculinity, or, just, I'm into video games. I like Call of Duty and Madden, and you can be into Call of Duty and Madden, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that there's an issue with that, but I'm saying we build up these barriers where it was like, oh, yeah, we like Donkey Kong. Ironically, am I right? No, this is what it would look like if you're into Donkey Kong.
This is what it would look like if we put 25 years into a Donkey Kong website. It's not that. It's just what it would look like if we did that.
Yeah, and so I sort of just rolled with the punches, because if it made us feel better, fine. But I was always the more, I don't want to say obsessive, I was always the most like blatantly passionate about arguing things like canon and continuity and where the various islands were in relation to each. Like, that's the kind of stuff I really get into is, okay, so the creators have done like 75% of the work for us. What if we bring it all the way home for them and fill in the missing pieces? And
sure,
that was always part of my persona on DK Vine, right? But I think what happened around the time, I mean, a little bit before the time of this shift, but definitely when I did become the sole editor-in-chief of DK Vine, the sole permanent host of the Kongversation, is that I also just developed a massive distaste for cynicism. And I saw the virtue of just earnestly embracing something. If something doesn't bring people harm, if it's not an outwardly toxic thing to be a fan of, then what is it hurting? If it brings people joy, and if it can bring people together, then why are we hiding our love for this when our whole reason for being here is our love for this? So it was a conscious decision on my part around that time to drop the act, and just, I think, I've talked about this before, when I addressed like why we pulled earlier seasons of the show. I stopped hiding behind an act. I started being the real me for the first time. And that was not just in the kind of humor, the kind of personas we hid behind, but it was also just, like in our MO, in our sort of manifesto for why we're doing it. If we're no longer going to hide behind this parody of a fan site, we are a fan site. We are a news source. We are a celebration of these terrific games that these people made. I think what was really affirming for me was, so I was running DK Vine's Facebook page, and this was back when like Facebook was the popular social media platform. This was like before your grandparents were on Facebook. And I developed like 34,000 followers on Facebook running the DK Vine Facebook page. And seeing the amount of fans for these games from around the world, it was just so clarifying for me. It was like, this stuff brings people together and it helps people find community. And we should be embracing that.
Absolutely. I think it's In short, it's a great move. It's a great and noticeable from the outside move that happened even after the Kongversation became woke.
Yeah.
Just even after that, you got a different flavor of woke, and it's a better one. It's always increasing qualities in your flavors of woke.
Do the flavors include spicy?
We'll move on. The final and current period of Donkey Kong Vine history.
Donkey, don't call it that. The DK could stand
Hyle
for
Russell
anything.
History.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you're right. It's Dinky Kong history. Is the current era. I don't know if we've settled on a name to describe what is happening now. You could call it the COVID era if you want to be a real bummer about it. Or the post-Platonic era, maybe. The post-ukulele era.
Post-Platonic makes it sound like they're shuttered. Like it makes it sound like they're no longer making games.
Yeah. It's post-ukulele games for now. Then, but I think in terms of defining what's happened to the website, I would say just post-Renaissance. It is the post-Renaissance now.
It's
it
the
is
cool
not
down.
the Renaissance anymore.
Okay.
It's another thing. It's the cool. We can call it the cool down. You want to call it that? That's kind of fun. During the cool down, which started with an outbreak in March of 2020. Roughly. We've been in there for a few years. It's been described as a drought for the DKU. We have had updates to Sea of Thieves and Smash Brothers. We've had Donkey Kong appearing in several Mario spin-offs, but by and large, it has been pretty light. Maybe the lightest period since, really, I guess just the whole time. But that's just about the games that are being covered. I want to talk about the projects that are going on now, because I think the biggest moment in this post-Renaissance era, the cooldown era, is for DK Vine, I mean, is you going independent, you going full-time, you running the website as your main deal. This has changed some things for you, at least.
Yes.
So you've talked about it before. You've said this is going to be a great thing for you, both personally and also professionally, and also just for the lifeblood of the website. I tend to agree. What's next? What's the next period? What are we going to call it?
Well, Andre suggested this period could be called the Anticipation Era, to be concluded when either Donkey Kong or Anticipation finally gets a new entry. Which I do like that, because this does feel like massive amount of foreplay, right? Which I love. I love getting all worked up before the climax, if you will. But I like, what are you asking, Mitchell? Like, sorry, I got distracted by sex. All right.
Sure, yeah. If I had a nickel. What more can we do, is my new question to you. What more can we do as the surrounding constellation in DK Vine? And you can take that to mean either Kongversation co-hosts, of which I am one, or just the general populace that interacts with DK Vine. What would you prefer we do? What could we do to make it better?
You don't owe anything. You don't have to do anything. What are you talking about?
We don't have to, but what could we do?
Well, I don't know. Like, it's not
If
my
we were
place.
in a generous mood.
It's not my place to define your arc. Like, if you want to contribute, great. If not, that's completely understandable. I just hope you continue being in that constellation, because I really enjoy having you in my life, Mitchell. What I said about Cameron and Jeff and Matt and Joe and, by extension, everyone else on the DK Vine staff, David, and we've got Gibbon and the Idaho crew now. And I include you there, Mitchell. I include, Josh and Malik and we've got Courtney and just everybody who's been on this podcast and has stuck with me. You are my very best friends. You really are. And I know that might be weird because we don't live adjacent to each other. We don't see each other IRL all that much, but genuinely, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I love all of you. And it's meant so much to me that you've stuck by me, through your own career aspirations, through your own journeys on this spinning blue and green globe. And, I just want to thank you, because I could not do this without our staff, my friends, and our audience. The people who listen to this podcast every episode or even infrequently, the people who follow us on social media, read the website, watch the streams or videos. You all mean so much to me. Even if you don't make yourself known, even if I don't know who you are, I still appreciate you. I see you in the spiritual sense. So I just hope you stick with me, because I really do feel like I'm capable of so much more than I've been able to deliver, especially since 2017, especially since I've been really going at this as the sole driving creative force at DK Vine. Not to just diminish, everything our staff does and has brought to the table, but I'm the one who, has to stamp all the decision making. So, it just, I hope you don't grow tired of me, because I feel like I am but, what's the Pokemon that's, in the cocoon and then it comes out and it's a beautiful butterfly?
A caterpillar.
Well, no, I'm not talking about a caterpillar. I'm trying to speak to your level. And I know you like Pokemon, Mitchell. What is the Caterpie, and what's the middle state of the Caterpie?
Caterpie actually doesn't evolve. It's just the one thing.
Well, I thought it became a butterfly.
No. So, Hyle, thank you so much. That was really beautiful. I have just a few very quick questions I want to get through.
Sure.
Maybe we can call it a lightning round.
Okay.
Please limit your answers to 3 to 4 sentences.
3 to 4 sentences? I'm not capable of that.
I know. It's something that we're going to be testing here today. It's also part of your performance review.
Okay.
Your brevity.
Oh.
So number 1 of these. Are we goal-driven or reactive as a project? Is the DK Vine project goal-driven or reactive?
Goal-driven, but reactive when necessary.
Is the prosperity of your work tied to the prosperity of the DKU?
I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of the DKU. So no, I could subside on just the games we've had and spend the rest of my life discussing them.
How do you feel about having tied yourself to a rule-based system for what you cover when other fan sites of a similar ilk can just decide?
Keeps me honest.
Okay. What if there was a Donkey Kong fan website of the quality and caliber that there used to be, of like a number of them actually, that somehow gained enough traction to become a major competitor to DK Vine, how would we feel about that?
I would welcome it. I feel like competition only makes us better. And we are not adversaries with fellow fans. We are partners.
Was the Rare Renaissance all it's cracked up to be?
It depends what you're looking for. But personally, I believe it was.
Which aspect of the DKU, these are not performance review questions anymore. Which aspect of the DKU do you believe fans should be most attentive to in terms of being excited for new things? Rare IP, Nintendo IP, or Platonic IP?
I can say with confidence, Donkey Kong and Platonic, yes. Rare IP, it's a crapshoot. Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. Now, at the beginning of this, somewhere near the beginning of this episode, I said that I want you to leave here today with a job description. A formal idea of what Hyle Russell does, and something that we can come back to and say, well, has Hyle Russell been doing that? So, with everything that we've talked about today, do you think that you've gotten any more insight than maybe you had before into what we should what we should put down on paper as your job description?
I would say being the ringleader of the greatest Donkey Kong and Rare related show on Earth. And I mean show in the broader sense, like a circus, right? I don't just mean this podcast. I mean my whole life is a performance, Mitchell. And my whole life I give to DK Vine.
Wow, Hyle. I had one more question from my lightning round that I forgot to do. What is DK Vine's role as a vibe contributor?
Nothing but good vibes. Nothing but chill vibes.
Is that something you're responsible for, though? Or is that just something that you have right now?
No, I feel like I am responsible for the vibes of our audience. I want people to always feel good coming out of any of our ventures. If I harsh anybody's mellow, if I bring down the vibes, if I have some sour vibes that I'm responsible for, then I'm not doing my job adequately.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us here today, Hyle. The office has been... I need to open a window in the office. Performance reviews just bring out the worst in both of us, it seems. Yes. But I can say that it's been a pleasure being here. Now, if you would step outside for just a moment, I am going to speak to your employer, Hyle Russell, about the results of today's performance interview.
Oh, okay. So I should go, well, and then I should come back in.
I suppose we could do it that way.
Okay. But by the way, these performance reviews usually go over 2 hours. It's okay. All right, I'm heading out. Hold on. Hi. You wanted to talk to me? Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, so we just did Hyle's performance review, and we just have some findings based on what we've talked about today. Some needs improvement category items, and some things that we're really happy about. And in fact, just let's start by saying 95% things that we're really, really happy about.
Okay.
So in case you were thinking of firing or lowering the pay on Hyle Russell, we would advise against doing that because, first and foremost, Hyle Russell is a pillar of the Donkey Kong fan community that does not deserve him. He has been the most active, the most persuasive, the most important, and the most spiritually condensing aspect of any kind of fan community that we've ever seen. That said, he is being burdened a little bit by something, well, frankly, I think is something that we should talk about as a shortcoming of expectations. You see, he thinks that he's very responsible for the vibe of the Donkey Kong fan community. And after doing some research and looking into that claim, we found that actually he is extremely not responsible for the general happiness of the fan community. And it needs to be understood that even when things aren't going all right, which is sometimes the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in, it's not something that he can take into his own hands and feel one way about or another in terms of his success. He is successful as long as he is feeling. Not feeling good, just feeling. Also, there has been a legitimate criticism that of the aspects of his job that he is responsible for, he has been neglecting Viva Pinata. I think we'll just write that down and convert that to a goal. Let's say this time next year, we would like to see some Viva Pinata exploration at the very least. We don't need to get far into things, but this time next year, we should have cracked that egg into the bowl. Finally, and just this last bit here, Hyle Russell has been doing this podcast for a number of years and has been increasingly successful at making a show that is sincere in how much it cares. It's a very caring show. It's a very safe show for a lot of people to come back to. It's something that we're very proud of him for. That said, it has been recommended that he do an episode about drugs and mind-altering substances in the DKU by an experienced radio producer, and that's simply not something that we can ignore.
Absolutely not.
So you'll have to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jotting that down.
Finally, and yeah, the very last thing that we had from Hyle Russell's performance review is that on his own accord, he said, and we did write this down, that he is, word for word here, capable of so much more than what we've been given. And I think that there's a lot of good in that in that sentiment, and a lot of worry from us as well. It's great that we think that the ceiling on this thing can just explode through several stories of additional ceilings above it. We're very happy to see that. But more than what we've been given, it does feel that Hyle Russell is taking our satisfaction with the DKU a bit personally, and it might be negatively affecting his feelings, and thus negatively affecting his ability to be a good webmaster for dkvine.net. So all of those things put together, I think we would be very confident giving him a report card with a 94%. That's a solid A. And we're excited to see what kind of progress he makes next year this time.
Well, if this is the way you feel, I can't dispute it entirely. I would maybe lower that score just a little bit and suggest a slight pay decrease, because I don't know, DK Vine is one thing, but have you seen Cerebi.net? It's terrific. It's a terrific resource for Pokemon. They contain up-to-date news, databases, and information about all of the Pokemon video games. Also, the collectible card game sets and the TV show. I highly recommend Cerebi.net. And until Hyle meets those standards, I'm afraid we have to give him a solid C-.
This has been a File 2 production.
Qué rico.